In this video, I'm going to be going over 20 minutes straight of useless ARC information. Not really too much to say about it, so let's just get into it. First off, we have the Diplodocus, which actually has two different taming methods, and it's one of the very few creatures in the game to actually have two taming methods. First being the passive tame, which you just saw, and then there's the knockout tame. I find it easier to do passive tame because you don't have to knock it out. But after that is about extinction, and specifically the city. If you notice, it's actually in the shape of an implant, which a lot of the things in ARC are, and for some reason I didn't notice this until recently, but it's a pretty cool detail. And after that is the Hesperornis, and the Hesperornis is supposed to insta-kill fish, which of course it does, and it does that by doing 100 million damage to them if you have your damage numbers on, which is kind of funny. And after that, we have the raft. You can actually put rafts on lava, which doesn't make any sense at all, and then you can just go around as if it's completely normal. I don't know why you'd want to do this, as you'd probably just end up dying from accidentally falling in the lava or being too close to it, but it's still pretty cool. After that is the Featherlight. Has the exact same animations as the Phoenix for flying and landing. Even though the Phoenix doesn't land in ARC Survival Evolved, it has the same landing animation in ARC Ascended, which is kind of interesting. Also, another fact about the Phoenix is it was the first ever creature to be added to a DLC after its release, and it was the only time they did that in ARC Survival Evolved. And also, it was added like a year after Scorched Earth came out as well, so quite a bit after it eventually came out. Next one I find is kind of sad because all of these creatures in the game that had skins of tech variants got their own tech creature, except for the Mosasaur. There's the tech Mosasaur skin, which you pay like $1 in order to get, and they never ended up adding it as an official creature, which I think kind of sucks because the tech Mosasaur would have been really sick. After that is a small one, but if you put Angler Gel and the torch, it will actually look a lot different. It won't be the regular flame, it'll just be like the gel glowing blue, which I think looks really sick. After that is another like kind of cosmetic one, as you can actually paint the boss flags, and you can paint them whatever you want, and you can use the little paint gun to do so. Next is you can actually tame leeches. I have no idea why you'd want to, but if you do, all you need is a fish basket, and you could put it in a cage if you want to easily trap it. And then after a while, you'll be able to basically pick it up with the fish net, and then you can place it down wherever you want, and you'll have your own disgusting pet leech. Next, if you ever wanted to know the max level that you can get in the game, it is going to be level 205, and there's a lot of ways to get there. You got to basically get all the explorer notes, all the runes from Fjordur, and kill a ton of the bosses on alpha difficulty, but the max level is 205. After that is one about cryopods. If you didn't know, when cryopods were originally added, they were exclusive to Extinction, and of course they just dropped with the DLC, but eventually they made it to where you could get them on all maps, which was just a phenomenal change, as they're one of the most useful items in the entire game. After that is the creatures, the Carno, the Parasaur, and the Raptor. All can be found on every single map in the game, which is pretty cool. I think there might be more, but these three definitely you can find on every single map. This next one's about the Terrajapa and the Tropio. If you didn't know, these actually share the exact same animations and sounds. This next one is about bosses, and specifically like the Broodmother and stuff when the game first came out, as they didn't have boss arenas, and when you went to go fight a boss, it would just spawn at the boss terminal or the obelisk, which meant you could actually lead these to people's bases and just absolutely demolish them, because there's not really much they could do if a Broodmother comes and shows up to their base, which I think was really funny, and you could use that in PvE as well to destroy people's bases. And more information about the Broodmother is that you can actually find it on 6 different maps. You can find it on the island, the center, Valguero, Gen 1, Gen 2, and Fjordur, which is quite a bit of maps to find a single boss on. And after that is the Rock Drake dens on Crystal Isles. For some reason they have Rock Drake dens and they don't spawn Rock Drakes at all. They're found in the floating islands area, and this is really sad. Of course, future maps like Fjordur would end up getting Rock Drakes, but the Crystal Isles did not, and it really sucks that they didn't add them. Maybe they'll add them back when ARC Survival Ascended comes out with Crystal Isles, but I doubt it. Genesis Part 1 and 2 both have their own variants, the X variants for Genesis Part 1 and the R variants for Genesis Part 2, but there's actually 2 creatures you can find that both have 2 creatures that have these variants. There's an X Allo and an R Allo, and then there's an X Parasaur and an R Parasaur. These are the only 2 creatures that have both variant types. After that is the Tech ATV, which you can actually cryopod for some reason. I don't know why you'd want to cryopod this thing or even make it in the first place, but for some reason you can cryopod them. Next is you can't get swamp fever on scorched earth. It's literally impossible. For some reason the game just won't let you get it, probably because there's no leeches on scorched earth, but it's like literally impossible to have swamp fever on the map. And after that is kind of a weird one, but Meganeera can actually land. I've never really seen it land other than this footage here, as I had basically had to like force it to land with commands, but they can land. You ever wondered what the largest creature in Ark is? It's actually Rockwell and not the King Titan, even though it's very small, like very small difference. They're pretty much almost the same size, but Rockwell is just technically a little bit bigger, so that does make it the largest creature in the game. And after that is an actual Easter egg. This one you can find at these coordinates, and you can find a Easter egg of Ice Age in Fjordur. And after that, we have an item that was actually completely removed from the game, and it is the net gun. Now, every time I talk about this, I've seen a lot of people get this confused with the net projectile. They're two different things. The net projectile is really good, but this one can actually take down a Giga and Bronto, which is absolutely insane. It makes sense why they removed it, because it was just completely overpowered. And after that is there's a total of 12 maps in the game. There's 6 story maps and 6 custom maps, so pretty easy. And the custom maps are, of course, mod maps that were ported to the base game. So there's been quite a bit. I remember when I started playing, there was only like 3, so been quite a difference. After that, if you drink beer near a Bloodstalker, it will actually change the name of it, and it will usually change it to something really weird and funny, which I think is a really cool little Easter egg. If you didn't know, the map for Lost Island was actually inspired by a completely different map, and that was the Elder Scrolls map. As you can see, they look pretty identical when it comes to the layout as well, with just a few differences, and I believe even some like castles and stuff are in the same location on the Ark map as they are in the Elder Scrolls map. But after that is the Strider. If you didn't know, the Strider originally wasn't like made for Genesis Part 2, even though of course it came out on Genesis Part 2. It originally looked like this and was going to come out for Extinction, and I think this version looks really cool though. It's super alien looking and would have been really cool in the game. And the Desert Titan can actually fly underwater as well, which is kind of cool, I guess. I mean, I don't really know what you'd need to do underwater with the Desert Titan, but if you ever wanted to go swimming underwater with the Desert Titan, you can do that. The Carcharodontosaurus was the first creature to be added in the span of 6 years to the base game, as they were adding a bunch of DLC creatures to DLC maps and the free DLC maps as well. There's adding new creatures, but they didn't actually add any to like the base game, like on all the other maps, like the island and stuff, for 6 years. The Carchar was the first one, and before that it was the Otter, which came out in 2017 when the game officially came out. And I wish they would have added more in that time, because it really did suck not having creatures added to the main game for that long. Also, the Carchar was a winner. It wasn't actually a winner of a creature vote. The only reason it was added is because it came second in multiple different creature votes, so they just decided to add it in anyways, which I think was a really cool idea, and I'm glad we ended up getting the Carchar in the game. This next one, if you have a Manta and you jump out of the water with it, if you pause the game or just type in the command fly, it'll allow you to just fly around outside of the water, which is like the only underwater creature you can do this with, as if you try and fly out of the water, it just won't work with commands. But this thing, you can just jump out of the water and fly, and it's really fun to mess around with, as you basically like fly around at Mach 10, and it's actually super glitchy when you go really fast like that. But the thing is, it will instantly die if you jump off of it, so if you don't do this with a Manta that you actually care about, but it is pretty funny to mess around with. And also, the next fact is the thing in the game that costs the most metal, or the item that costs the most metal in the game, is the cloning chamber with 5,500, which is insane. And which makes sense, it's absolutely huge, but the second most expensive metal item is the tech replicator that costs 5,000 metal. For some reason, the mirror in Ark Survival Evolved, at least on console anyway, doesn't work at all. It's just black and it doesn't reflect at all. There's actually a tiny little bit of reflection coming off the bottom, but it's not enough to actually consider it a mirror, as you know, it's actually supposed to reflect properly, which it doesn't. The Overseer is the only creature in the game, or at least the only boss creature, to not drop a boss head or boss trophy head, which, I mean, kind of makes sense, but kind of sucks at the same time. And it also doesn't have a boss flag either. It would be really cool, at least, if it had a boss flag. That would be really cool, but it doesn't. The Bronto, for some reason, has 2 attacks, even though they both do the same thing. As you see right here, you can't really tell, but I'm switching between R2 and L2, and they both do the exact same thing, which is kind of weird that they has 2 attacks if they're both the exact same. You can pick up an Ichthyosaurus with a fish basket, which Never really realized until recently, actually, as I just assumed they were too big to fit in the fish basket. But if you wanted to, you can put an Ichthyosaurus in a fish basket, even though it'd probably be easier just to cryopod it. If you didn't know, Extinction was actually planned to be the final map in Ark Survival Evolved, or at least the final story map. This was the ending to the Ark story, and this was going to be the last story map, but they actually went back on that and ended up coming out with Genesis Part 1 and 2, and of course adding a bunch of custom maps after that. But I do remember this one, when Extinction came out, it was hyped up as the finale for Ark. The Uranium-Natha was actually supposed to come out just for the island on Ark Survival Ascended when Ark Ascended dropped, because it was the creature vote for the island, but it ended up just coming out in Ark Survival Evolved instead. I believe it was because of delays for Ark Ascended, but I guess it's nice that Ark Survival Evolved got one final creature. Also, speaking of the Uranium-Natha, can pick up cloning chambers, and it's really funny to look at. It doesn't really make much sense, because the cloning chamber is like 5 times the size of it. Maybe not 5 times, but you know what I mean. It's massive. If you notice, the alpha version of the Elite Sickness is always white, and that's because it's actually a reference to Moby Dick. Even though for some reason in the Explorer notes they talk about how it's like one of the most dangerous sea creatures ever, and yet usually they only have like 5,000 health and they're super easy to kill. For some reason there's only 4 sauropods in Ark Survival Evolved. There's the Amargasaurus, the Diplodocus, the Bronto, and the Titanosaur, but of course we are going to get some more with Ark Ascended, like the Brachiosaurus and the Dreadnoughtus. For some reason, there's actually 2 polar bear variants. There's the just regular polar bear, and then there's the dire polar bear. And the polar bear is a little bit bigger than the dire polar bear. And I believe some of them are found on different maps. Like I think one of them is found on Ragnarok, and the other ones are found like in the other ice caves in different maps. But in the Eldridge Isle area and Crystal Isles, originally when this was a mod map, because it was a mod map before it became official, there were the liquefied creatures. They were basically like blue, translucent like skeleton creatures that would glow in the dark, and they looked really sick. And I want to say kind of sad that they removed it, because I think it made it a lot scarier and it kind of like fit the vibe for that place. But now they're gone and it's not as cool, that area, because there's not really too much unique creatures in there. Most people know you can put hats on snails, but you can also put the Santa skin on it and it will go on its shell instead of on its head, which is kind of a funny look. There's a hidden item in the game called Super Test Meat, and the only way to get it is by spawning it in with this command. But if you do get it, it says that you shouldn't have this, and what it does is it literally just instantly tames anything. You can even use it on herbivores and stuff, and it will just instantly tame them, which is kind of cool. For some reason, the Morellatops egg actually has a different name. It's called the Camelsaurus, which I guess kind of makes sense, because the Morellatops is basically just like a camel mixed with a dinosaur type thing. It's kind of weird that it has a different name with the egg, though. The long neck rifle with darts and the silent sniper rifle actually have the exact same sound. There are actually 2 ghost wolf variants in the game. The first one is on the left, and it's that kind of blue one. It's the ghost direwolf, and you find it during the Halloween events in Ark Survival Evolved. And the one on the right is the ghost one you find in the Labyrinth Cave, and it's kind of like a mini boss you have to fight. The coelacanth is one of the very few creatures in Ark Survival Evolved that is actually still alive today. It was thought to be extinct, but it actually turns out that they're still alive. If you played Ragnarok when it first came out, you'd probably know that you couldn't actually access half of the map when it came out. The entire desert area was locked off, and that entire bottom area of the map, this is what it looked like, or at least this is what the map looked like. You could see you really couldn't explore any of the areas, and I remember people were waiting for it to come out, and there was a bunch of theories that there was going to be like sand whirlpools in the dunes, which of course never ended up happening. I still think that would have been kind of cool though. The Archaeopteryx and the Microraptor actually have the same animations and sounds. If you go underwater, the Doedicurus actually has a bite attack. Normally it does the roll, but you can bite underwater if you are there. It actually goes really fast underwater too. The Calicotherium, Hyenodon, and Megatherium can all sit down. There's not many creatures that can do this, but it's kind of funny to look at them. The Megatherium looks very distinguished. And on a similar note, the Shadowmane and Megalosaurus are like the only creatures in the game that actually have a sleeping animation, and you could put them to sleep as well. Even though the Shadowmane doesn't require it, but the Megalosaurus very much does, as it will get sleep deprived if you don't let it sleep. In the beginning of the Overseer arena and the deck area, the Megapithecus is completely glitched out, the little hologram of it, and it's been like this ever since the Overseer came out in 2017, and they never fixed it, so it's just been like this forever, and obviously it's never going to get fixed. I think it's fixed in Arc Ascended, though. You can turn glow sticks to any color, and then the light will project what color that is. So there's the purple glow sticks, and then you can paint them red and it will give off red light. The best one to do is white because, you know, it makes it super bright, so that's actually pretty good. Across the custom maps, you can find dead bodies of different animals you can harvest for resources. The first one ever was the Basilosaurus on Ragnarok. Then there's the Ichthyosaurus that was added on Vulguero you can find. As well as on Vulguero, there's also the Carbonimes, I think that's how you say it, the giant turtle ones, for they're way smaller than regular turtles, which is interesting but still useful for harvesting them. And then once you get to Crystal Isles, you can find these nasty rotten looking trikes and stegos, and the stegos are still the old but pre-TLC ones, and you can find these exact same ones from Crystal Isles on Fjordur as well. You can find the trikes and the stego. The green obelisk on Extinction is the smallest out of any obelisk in the game. All of the obelisks are the same size, I believe, except for the green obelisk on Extinction. It's super small. You could see that was my character floating in the middle of it compared to the blue obelisk on Extinction. As you can see, it's way bigger. The blue one is anyway. So yeah. The highest level you can find wild creatures is the Alpha Tech Cave on the island, and you can find them up to level 620. You can't tame them though, because, you know, they're in the Tech Cave, and you can't really tame cave creatures, but that's the highest level you can find, 620. Karchars actually give Giga Hearts despite not being a Giga, which I guess kind of makes sense because they're both from the same family, the Karcharodontids, but why wouldn't it just be called a Karcharodontid Heart rather than a Giga Heart? This is every single wall climbing creature lined up in Ark Survival Evolved. There's the Ferox, the Enforcer, the Thyla, the Deinonychus, the Megalania, the Dinopithecus, the Bloodstalker, and finally the Rock Drake. So all of these you can climb up walls with, and they're all really fun to use. Most people know that the wood water platform is smaller than the metal one, but you can actually fit it pretty much perfectly inside of the metal one. So you can have them both like this, which is actually pretty satisfying to look at. And I guess if you wanted to, you could make it like a smaller little moon pool there if you wanted to, by using this to basically make your base where you can have two of them in the same one. If you force tame the King Titan, it will not basically listen to you at all. If you do any whistles, it won't work, and it will try and kill you instead, basically just acting like the normal boss. There are 12 sets of armor in Ark Survival Evolved, the first one being cloth, and then there's hide armor, which of course is just a step one after that. And then there is the fur armor, which of course is used for like cold climates and stuff like that. And then after that is the desert armor. This one you can get on Scorched Earth and a few other maps, of course used for like hot climates. Then there's the ghillie armor, which you can also use in hot climates or to blend yourself from like wild creatures. Then there's the chitin armor, which is just a step above hide, and then there's flak, which is the next step after that and can be made in the smithy as well. It's really strong and one of the best armor suits in the game. Then there's the hazard suit, which you use on aberration for the hazardous areas. They also have the scuba gear, which is the only one that doesn't have gloves on it, but it has the rest of the armor sets you can use. And then there's the riot armor, which is supposed to be the strongest right before tech, which of course tech has all the abilities and all of that. And then there's the Federation tech armor, which you use on the Genesis Part 2, which doesn't require element and is a lot weaker when it comes to the armor. There's also 3 separate helmets with no like set for the armor. There's the Miner's helmet, which just has a light on it. Then there's the gas mask, which you can use for poisonous areas. And then there's the night vision goggles, which I don't know if many people use night vision goggles. I don't know if I've ever even crafted them though. Extinction has the highest height limit in the game. You can go really high above the entire city and above the obelisks as well, which on no other map you can go above the obelisk because there's usually the border like in between the obelisk and the world border, so that is pretty cool. You can actually go that high. Before Genesis Part 1 came out, it was kind of leaked in the files of the game, and it was actually called DiGiorno, or at least that was the code name for it, which kind of sparked some confusion because that's also the same name as a pizza brand. And I believe people were like tweeting at the pizza brand and stuff, which kind of got them involved, which is kind of funny. For some reason, when you go to cut your hair, it says there's like mysteries, as if you had to unlock the hairstyles, which of course you can unlock them by getting explore notes and stuff, but you don't have to actually unlock them. You can still use them despite not knowing the name of them. You just have to click accept and it works just fine. There are 16 theropods in total in Ark, not including like fantasy ones, so real world theropods. There's the Microraptor, the Trudon, the Compy, and then there's the Oviraptor, Raptor, Dillo, Baryonyx, the Carno, the Megalosaurus, Therizinosaur, the Allo, the Yudi, the Rex, the Spino, the Karchar, and the Giga, which is quite a lot, this considering that there's only like 3 sauropods in the game. So I kinda wish there were more sauropods, but I do love the theropods though, so I'm not really complaining that there's that many. That's going to be it for this video. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe. Thanks for watching, and bye.